1 in 5 suffer.
Erases the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
We are Marla and Dave.
That's right.
And Mom.
That's right. And we want to remind you guys that today's show is brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason. And you, by the way, because we depend on your donations. So make sure you stop by either one of those websites, NAMI San Fernando Valley or Loving Beyond Reason. Click on the Mental Health Mondays tab and hit donate. That's how we keep this show going. Absolutely. Now, we are continuing our discussion this week that we started last week with our very own Mimi, Marlene McCraw, affectionately known to us and our family as Mimi, and those who love her as Mimi. That's her nickname. That's her grandma name. Now,
that's her grandma name.
Yeah, my grandpa name is actually my grandpa name is Pappy.
Well, for my mom though, her friends don't call her Mimi. Her friends
That's
call her
true. Leanie.
Leanie.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Those are a long time ago friends.
The new friends call her, "Hey, Chickie D." They call her Chickie.
Well, as we started the discussion last week, we want to introduce Mimi as she was the chief executive nurse for the VA. She also specialized in psychiatric nursing before that, which was really valuable to our family, not just for the love and support that she gives us, but her expertise as well, because we're a family that deals with brain differences. Today, we're going to change the focus a little bit more. Now that we're dealing with Loving Beyond Reason, which Marla started, that Mimi is also on the board of. She's a big part of Loving Beyond Reason. And she has a lot of good ideas based on her experience with what we can do to help kind of focus help where it's needed in the mental health community. When we come back, we will continue our discussion with Mimi.
Whoop, whoop.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
Welcome, Mimi, once again.
Hey there. Welcome back.
It says Tony. Okay, we good?
So now, Mimi, we were talking about last week sort of the early signs that you helped us to pay attention to with Moniece and with DJ.
And really navigate into the right channels for help.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing about that is, and Marla brings up a very good point, what we have experienced is that people who have help navigating the mental health space, so to speak, tend to do much better as they try to get the right help, because it can be very confusing. Would you say, Mimi? Mimi, can you hear us? All right. I'm not sure that Mimi can hear us. Something seems to be muted there. I see a mute on the UBN network on the screen, so I don't know if that means anything. Mimi, can you hear us?
Mom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, now she can hear us. You can hear us now, right, Mimi?
I couldn't hear a word a minute ago.
All right, awesome. I was asking the question. I said that the statement that I opened with was a lot of people. We had your help dealing and navigating the mental health space when it comes to care for our kids. But what we found is that when you don't have that, and even with your help, there are a lot of hit and misses when you're trying to get the right therapist, the right medication. I can only imagine what it would be like without someone like you guiding a family through this mental health space. Is it usually that convoluted, or have things gotten worse over the years?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned before in the last program, if you start early, it's a lot easier because you can actually go through the school system and get major help that way, because there are school counselors and school nurses that can hook you up with the proper resources. But, you know, like we mentioned before, a lot of the time, things don't happen until after 18, because there is a space there between 18, 22 that those mental health behaviors exaggerate, and it then is beyond your control because it's what they want to do, and the questions that they ask to delineate them needing help. An aunt could answer, who's the president, what day is it, what time
Right.
is it. Those are the things
That you ask somebody who has a concussion.
right, in our field we look at competence. That's what we call it. And if a person is competent, then they are able to dictate their own treatment, and most of the time they do not want any treatment. So early on, if we can go through the school system, that helps. Now after 18,
Are you talking
that's
about like elementary school, high school? What age?
up until yes, up elementary
Any
school,
any
up
school
to
before 18.
any school before 18. That is your best source.
Okay. All right. That's good information. Now, as we started dealing with loving beyond reason, one of the things that we started moving into, which was your suggestion, was to help facilitate professionals and therapists, and basically staffing smaller mental health establishments. When I say smaller, private ones, establishments that are usually 6 patients or fewer, or a small number, definitely less than 14. But before we go there, I remember, you can watch old movies and you had giant mental health hospitals, and they used to call them asylums back in the day. And over time, those mental health hospitals just went away. What was the cause of that?
They didn't just go away, they purposely. I was a part of that, unfortunately. Say in 1972 is when that whole thing changed. The state hospitals were closed, and these facilities that you're mentioning, 6 beds, 8 beds, they're board and care facilities.
Yes.
And so those facilities are poorly, and unless they're VA sponsored, it's
the Wild West, no regulation.
There's no regulations, and many times, and I never like to talk in absolutes, but many times it's just one person or 2 people staffing those facilities, and it's the bare minimum. Once they get the board and care facility, now you have to go through a lot of hoops to get it, but in order to have a good board and care or a good facility, you need to have a well-rounded program. And this is where we fall off, the radar falls off completely, because you need to have someone to help them get a job. You need to help them, with the things that are special for them, art, music. You need to have someone monitoring their medication. For mental health is very much, the medication process is very much like being addicted to something, because you develop tolerance for certain medications, and you need to be monitored constantly. Before now, patients were on medications that you needed to have your blood drawn constantly. Yeah. So, we've gone through a lot of iterations to get where we are now, and that's the situation. But to get in a good facility, most people, 9 out of 10 people, or 9.5 out of 10, no one can afford what it takes to get into a good facility. It costs anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 a month to be in a facility that's beneficial on all angles, where you can have an outcome that is going to be beneficial to you in the future.
Yeah, and we've experienced both sides of that spectrum. When DJ was at Creative Care,
Correct.
They had all kind of programs, but that was one of those facilities, like you said, Mimi, which was $20,000 a month, $5,000+ a week. And ironically, all you saw in there were celebrity families and
That's
things
where
of
I
that
came up
nature,
with the
because that's when
tagline.
you can afford it. But he's also been at the other spectrum in some
Boarding
homes
care.
where we finally said, well, he can't stay here. Even if he needs it, he can't stay here. We're going to continue this conversation with Mimi after this.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Suicide causes immeasurable pain, suffering, and loss to individuals, families, and communities nationwide. On average, 112 Americans die by suicide each day.
But suicide is preventable. Get that. I said suicide in many cases is preventable. So it's important to know what to do if someone you know is showing one or more of the following behaviors. Please do not ignore these warning signs. Get help immediately. Sign number 1, talking about wanting to die or to kill oneself. Looking for a way to kill oneself. Talking about feeling hopeless or having no reason to live. Talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain. Talking about being a burden to others. Do not ignore these signs.
Increasing the use of alcohol or drugs, perhaps. Acting anxious or agitated, behaving recklessly. Sleeping too little or too much. Withdrawing or feeling isolated. Showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. Displaying extreme mood swings.
Again, if you or someone you know are showing any of these signs, or maybe 1 or 2 or more, please seek help immediately. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 8255. Trained crisis workers are available to talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or you can call the NAMI Suicide Hotline, 877-727-4747. The hotline is open 24 hours a day, and a counselor can try to help or see that you get help if you're having thoughts of suicide. This message is brought to you by Mental Health Mondays with Marla and Dave.
I want to take this minute to mention one additional thing that is critical when it comes to signs of impending suicide. When people don't usually give things away, and they begin to give things away, particularly of value, that is a sign that you need to really watch. It's one of the things that it happens a lot.
All right, thank you for that, Mom. That's an extra special note.
Absolutely.
To be able to recognize.
So we're actually just going to start the next segment. We were going to have a little break, but Mimi came up with a very astute observation. And say that one more time, Mimi. When people are starting to collect things,
when they don't usually give things away,
they begin to give things away.
Things that would seem
purging
valuable
their
personal
valuables.
items. They have no desire to keep them anymore because they don't think they're going to be around.
Valuable purging.
And that is a good information if someone's dealing with any type of suicidal ideation or thoughts of suicide. Please pay attention to that. So, Mimi, one of the things that that in my research that I found was the Mental Health Systems Act of 1980 that Jimmy Carter signed into law, but was immediately removed and basically gutted by Ronald Reagan in 1981 once he became president. And that was the final straw that kind of got rid of an already growing movement of closing down the state hospitals, like you said they had started doing earlier.
that was the beginning
Of the end.
what you see in homelessness.
Hmm.
All of the state hospitals and all of those things were closed.
Care facilities
And they
were
were-
no more.
They were closed within a very short period of time. I had patients in the VA that had been there for years, and I was given weeks to
place them.
discharge them to board and care homes and put them out.
Well, you know what? This brings up in my mind, Mimi and Marla, we always talk about erasing the stigma, but what we also probably should add is adding empathy back into our society, because when the stigma really comes and we don't really care about anybody and just make sure that we can get the things that we want whenever we want it as fast as we can, and make sure that, you know, my tax dollars only go for the things that I want the tax dollars to go to, and to have no care. We already found out at the beginning of this pandemic, when people don't have health care, suddenly this pandemic runs all around the world and the hospital systems are overwhelmed. And a lot of people getting there a little bit too late because they're afraid to drive to the hospital for fear of what it's going to cost. When other countries that we've seen during the pandemic who do have nationalized health care, suddenly they can better handle on how to deal with this, and they actually collate better information as well, especially during this pandemic. So I want to just say that it's not just erase the stigma, it's adding empathy.
Right. I want to interject one other thing that we haven't talked about, and that is the one mental health system we have in this country is the jail.
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
That is the biggest,
It's the largest mental health facility. Yeah.
system that we have. And believe it or not, it's not easy to get in the jail mental health system.
Wow.
We've been through all of that.
You have to really finagle your way to get into that system. But it's the one system that when you're in there for 3 days,
Right.
after your 72 hours, normally they don't put you out right away.
Yeah, but it's still jail.
Right.
And that's the one
And
thing that's the one thing that we're fighting against as well, is that, you know, for a person who has a brain difference,
They don't understand being in jail.
it's not even that. It's yes, they don't understand it, but I think that at the base of all mental health fracture is trauma. So people who are already unbalanced or dealing with differences are further traumatized by that experience. It's not a helpful place for them to be. They may get the necessary help, meaning back on meds. At least for our son, that was the case after we fought to get him into the mental health side of incarceration.
And when we say fight, it was a literal fight.
Right.
We had to fight the system to make sure that our son got the help that he needed. And on top of that, once he was medicated properly when he was in jail, he then said to me at one of the times I was visiting him, he said, I don't understand what I'm doing here. Why am I in jail? He had no clear understanding of what was going on. So not always the best, not ever the best way to deal with the mental health situation.
Well, Mimi brings up a good point, and that's one more thing that Loving Beyond Reason has made a commitment. We're committed with Mimi's help and guidance to try to to literally caulk the holes for families in mental health. We'll be back to talk about more.
All right. That music says it's what, Marla?
Poll time.
Oh,
I'm too sick
Marla's
to-
not feeling too good today, everyone. Let's all say a collective, hope she feels better.
Mommy,
The poll question last week was, what percentage of the adult population in the U.S. suffers from mental illness? Your options were, and I added an option, and Mimi was right, that might be a hint. Your options were A, 11%, B, 18%, C, 23%, or D, 42%.
It is so whack that you only added the option for yourself. It's such a control
No,
mechanism.
and so Mimi, what was that hint that I gave last week? What does that mean the answer
Well,
is?
it was just added to the statistics. So it seemed pretty obvious to me that it might be 44%.
You know what?
Yes.
You know what, Mom? As well as being absolutely stunning and beautiful,
Your
so
deductive
smart.
reasoning
You're just smart.
is astute. Yes, it is. The answer is
Well,
ding,
that
ding,
was kind
ding.
of a no-brainer, really.
D, 42%. Now,
Don't take it for
and I
granted,
adjusted that because I've been using some of these quotes and some of these stats for quite some time. But post-pandemic, once I went back and had the added in the effects of the pandemic, the number shot up to 42%, which was already 11% higher than right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Moving on from Dave's control tactics, next week, how many adults in the U.S. suffer with some form of depression? A, 5.8 million, B, 11.2 million, or C, 17.3 million? Can you tell anything by my voice inflection?
Mimi, what do you think it
Million.
is? How many adults in the U.S. suffer with some form
Marla's
of
already
depression?
She's already given it
What do you mean?
away.
What'd I say?
5.8 million, 11.2, or 17.3?
17.3 million.
Mimi's guess is 17.3 million. We'll find out next
Well, see,
week.
if you're right, Mimi, maybe I'm just maybe I decoyed you. Who knows?
Maybe.
Guys, make sure you drop by either Loving Beyond Reason or NAMI San Fernando Valley or anywhere on the Mental Health Mondays social media sites. Click the donate button. We need you. Back to the show.
But the statistics say that 30% of some type of mental illness has resulted from COVID. And so that is part of the rise that you see for the number. Those are
All right, so sorry about that, Mimi. We had one little break that you started talking, so
Yeah,
we didn't want to
we were in a
be
break.
rude. So we had to kind of pause.
Those are
for a
little
minute.
spots that have other little things, but you have so much wonderful information. You're like a pop-up shop of info. We like it.
So no, go ahead and say what you were saying, Mimi. We're sorry. A little bit of that got cut off.
well, I don't know if maybe it wasn't the right spot to put it.
Well, no, what was it? Do you remember?
No, I was saying that statistics say that COVID is responsible for 30% of some type of brain
Difference.
Yeah.
fall, whatever, but 30%. And I'm saying that alone has helped that number shoot up.
For sure.
Absolutely. I know for me, just sitting around the house when my lifestyle was very different, it was a little destabilizing even for me. So I can only imagine.
You know what I think we should do? I think we should trade places on the couch. You come to my corner and I'll come to yours, and maybe our lives will change.
Well, maybe so. Mimi, let's get back to your idea about staffing some of these smaller facilities. And it really became obvious the need for that when our son,
Recently.
DJ, was recently during his last episode, before he was able to come back home, he did a stint in one of those smaller
Transition
facilities,
homes is what they call them.
transition homes, or really board and care in the terminology that you use, Mimi. And it was horrendous. And when I say horrendous, even when I went to visit him the first time, he was the only one that was alert. Everyone else in the facility was completely zombied out from their medication. And I'm not going to say that they didn't need it, but it was interesting that when I decided to take D out, because he was really begging me, and I was like, no, you can't come home, man. You got to walk this through. One of the things I found out when I decided to take him out was that his medication was no longer in the container that had his name on it with his instructions for that specific medication for him. They were taking and just dumping all the medications in a big generalized container for everybody. And for instance, when he says, well, his prescription says he's supposed to take,
5 milligrams of Haldol.
5 milligrams of whatchamacallit and something or something else. But she only had a 10 milligram tablet, and then she went to break it with her hand. I was like, wait a minute, you can't, what are you doing touching this medication? And you're not even a nurse, you're just a person who owns the facility. And it was a big giant bucket. And I'm like, okay, no.
David said that he went over there and he called me and he said, Okay, I know D can be kind of a prima donna, but when he said this food that he can't eat it, we please send him an Uber Eats? It was, Dave said he opened the pot and it looked like cat food.
It looked like cat food, slop. And
just
and,
indescribable
and the
meat.
funny thing about it is the kind of person that I am in certain situations, I really wasn't supposed to be in that part of the house, but when I was waiting for the lady to bring the medication, then I'm start walking all around, and I just start walking through the house, and I'm like, okay, this is, everybody here, like I said, was zombied out. The food was, I couldn't eat it. So I can only imagine that you would have to be heavily medicated for someone to force you to eat that food. So again, the need was immediately apparent that because there's not that level of regulation that you have with hospitals and larger facilities, that better staffing needs to be put in place. And instead of saying, let's close these places down, your idea was to start a business to help start staffing some of these places
adequately, which is what you did for a living. I mean, as a chief executive nurse, staffing the VA Southern California, one of the largest facilities, is no small feat, and making sure everything is meeting quality care.
And so I want to remind you guys that that's one of the things that when you support Loving Beyond Reason specifically, that's one of our goals, is to make sure that we can staff these smaller places, as well as to start
our own transition homes.
These transition homes and boarding cares with the proper staffing that someone like Mimi can help us with.
With the model that we've come to know to be necessary because we've walked it with our own job.
Absolutely. You need music. You need socialization training and vocational training, as well as you need your medication properly titrated and checked up on a regular basis, just like you were saying, because if you develop you get too used to some of your medications and you develop a tolerance, that could also be problematic when no one cares about whether it's right or wrong. So it's a lot there, but Mimi, you can speak on that a little bit, please.
Well, what I want to say is it is not all doom and gloom. Right. I have been a part of it, having good outcomes with the right treatment. You've got to have some kind of therapy, group support therapy, and the treatment needs to be targeted toward the individual and their need. And what people need to realize is one of the number one risk of any kind of mental illness is medication compliance. Because as soon as individuals begin to feel better, they no longer want to take their medication. Because most of the time it doesn't make them,
the side effects exactly.
The side effects it just doesn't make them feel right.
Right.
So you've got to have these other factors in place to give them the support, and it is possible for them to work, to have meaningful relationships. We just don't have the resources in place for other than those elite few,
right,
to make them a success. And it's possible, but the government, the state, whatever, instead of allocating money to some of these other things, this is where we need to funnel the money.
And that's why we need you guys, we need your support to help raise this money so that we can bring some of these things to fruition. Thank you, Mimi. We will continue our discussion right after this break.
Bad.
What are you doing?
Worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.
Well, you know what? Dave brought up an interesting point, and I'm pulling off my headphones because one of the small things that we started doing, Mimi brings all of her love and talents to the table. My mom is the creator of Mimi's mask.
Oh, that's right. I have one too.
And so Mimi's mask is something that is she makes each one by hand, custom ordered, and you can have various different models. And so this, is one of the ones that says mask or casket.
Yes.
But these are our flip and sips. And I love it because especially if you travel, you get on the plane. So I take this, hi-ya! And I let you see that so I literally put a straw in when I'm on the plane and I close it up. And so I can stay protected. They've got HEPA filters sewn in. Each one is done custom.
And I would say that she also made a new one specifically for traveling
Boop, 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 boop.
That has, what, Mimi, 6 layers now?
Right.
With
well,
two
I
HEPA.
call it a Fort Knox.
Yeah, it's it's a viral Fort
And
Knox.
it doesn't open. So this is a flip and sip, and if you're really nasty, then it's a plucking. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. But the bottom line is, every mask is made with the fundraising to help mental health. So it's on the lovingbyondreason.org website. Simple, hit the button that says Mask for Mental Health. My mom contacts every single solitary customer, finds out exactly what it is that you're ordering, the color you want to order, the size you want to order. It gives you all of your options, and each one is done with love and care and sent out to you along with your donation, receipt, card, and pop sockets, which we have on our phone at all times. And so this is what you'll get when you order a mask for mental health. So just one more thing. Look, anything in any way we can make a difference is what we are dedicated to do. As a family, we can't be more blessed. But both, to be honest, I joked Dave earlier, but we both really have incredibly supportive families and families that just love the hell out of us. And that's a blessing. And it's a double blessing that my mom, God kind of put her in a position to have more information than the average bear when it comes to the needs that we have in this space of mental health. So we appreciate you, Mom.
And we appreciate you once again, Mimi. Thank you so much for being guests on the show. We want to remind you guys that next week Scott Killaby will be back, and hopefully he makes it this time because he didn't make it last week or the last end of last month.
We'll be looking forward to a jumbo Scott's list.
Absolutely.
Scott's list on steroids. What?
Well, I want to say one thing in closing, and that is
10 seconds.
Yeah. The core to treating mental health is love.
Absolutely.
Hence loving beyond reason. And Mom, I'm sorry I was 10.5 pounds. I tried to fold my feet up so you wouldn't be in that much discomfort. But thank you for making me pretty, boo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.